Hello viewers, my name is Chase Clover and this is my review of the USW Steel Pergatory 2015 pay-per-view. My thoughts on the pay-per-view were, it was an interesting concept. If you hadn't watched the pay-per-view, something that had not been mentioned before was that each and every match would take place inside a cage. Not every match would have the stipulation of if you climbed out of the cage you would win, or if you escaped the cage you would win. Some did, but most did not. It was an interesting concept, I'll give it that. It was definitely different from last year's pay-per-view, and I have a feeling that the reason why every match was inside a cage was because they wanted to appeal to more people. They wanted to appeal to those kinds of people that did not like the pay-per-view last year, and if the pay-per-view were to be bad or just average this year and not make up for what it did last year, then people would become less interested in the product, and they would expect bad things from bad pay-per-views, bad events. Since Key and Case 2014 was not that great last year, then they would expect that this year's pay-per-view wouldn't be as great either, so they wouldn't watch, because people jump to conclusions, and I'm pretty sure that USW knows that. So it was an interesting concept, and I know it would have interested a lot of people who had paid for the pay-per-view, hoping that some of the matches would be great, and some matches would gain retribution for last year's below-average pay-per-view. Now, as I said, it was an interesting concept, and some of it worked. There were spots where, the cage was utilized, the way it should be when it comes to these kinds of, or that kind of environment. But the problem that I had with it was that it took away a lot of things that would make a hardcore match interesting. It did not allow them to go outside the ring. I mean, if they escape the cage, that's one thing, because then they'd have to go back in the cage in order for the pinfall or submission to count. I get it. They can always escape the cage if the match, or the stipulation isn't escape the cage and you win. Because in that case, you can escape the cage and fight on the outside, which happened with one of the matches. Only one of the matches, but still one of the matches. But it really held back some of the performers, and some of the performers are used to that outside environment, so it took away their specialty, it took away their home feeling to it, which kind of limited them to a specific moveset or a specific wrestling style. And I'll get into all of that in the review. So let's start. So of course we start the pay-per-view off with the intro to the pay-per-view and previewing the matches on the match card. Apparently that's what they're going to start doing now, kind of like with the WWE pay-per-views, which I feel is a good thing to do, considering some of the matches you have are not really known by people who don't follow the website or who don't follow the news. So some of the matches people don't know about. That's why it's a good idea to go and run down the list, so that way the performers or the matches are known by the viewers and they'll know what they're going to expect. So after the intro, we hit our first match, which was the kickoff match. It was a locked-in cage match. It was Chris Ross versus Lone Wolf. The point of the locked-in cage match, and I was very skeptic at the whole point, or not at the whole point, but at the whole problem that I thought USW would have, being as they were supposed to switch out cages, and you can't really lower or raise the cages. So what you had to do was, since the Steel Pergatory cage was hung up above the ring, you had to constantly be bringing out different cages and hooking and screwing them into the ring, so that way they would stay put. So they had to continuously go through cages, and had a bunch of spare parts lying underneath the ring, which was it was interesting, and I thought they would have a problem getting them off and back on in time, but USW found a way to buy them time and not make it look like they're just buying them time. But anyway, Chris Ross defeated Lone Wolf in the locked-in cage match. The cage match the cage that was used was pretty much a typical steel cage. Otherwise, the only other thing was that there was a roof that was just like the other cage walls. It was just a roof on top, and there was no door, so you could not leave. Whole point was to win via pinfall or submission, and Chris Ross won via pinfall. And that was the match. It was a pretty good match, I'll give that, because these are two great performers. So because of that, you expect that to be an interesting match, something worth watching. And this was worth watching. I give it 3 stars. It wasn't the greatest match on the card, and it wasn't the most exciting, but it was definitely a good match and something you can go back and watch. Afterwards, we get Dwayne Porter walking around backstage, talking to Zach Hardy and telling him that he hopes Hardy would win tonight, so that way I'm just reading off my notes because I took these yesterday, that's why I'm going to say tonight a bunch of times. But he hoped that Hardy would win, so that way he could face him at Cold Greatness 10. Either that, or he's playing it out so that way he would hope Dustin Raymond would win and get the title match against Dwayne Porter and Dustin Raymond at Cold Greatness 10. So that's what I feel like he was trying to do, trying to get in the mind of Hardy. Which technically ended up working later on the night, but I'll get to that later. Second match was a weapons cage match for the Extreme Championship. Titanfall defending the title against Crimson Red. The cage that was used was the same as a regular cage. The only difference was there were different weapons hooked into the walls and hooked into the rings, so there were a bunch of weapons utilized. One of the spots was pretty cool that Crimson Red was balanced on top of the ropes, and he had his back up to the cage wall, but there was a table in between the cage wall and Crimson Red. Titanfall bounced off the ropes and hit a leaping crossbody onto Crimson Red, putting him through the table and putting them both down the middle of the rope. And that was a pretty cool spot. I think it was one of the most interesting and unique spots in the match. Crimson Red ended up losing to Titanfall, so Titanfall retained the Extreme Championship, which makes me feel like which pretty much seals the deal of Crimson Red going off to face Washington, and Titanfall going to find a new Extreme Championship competitor, and we ended up finding out who the competitor against Titanfall will be for the Extreme Championship, because Philip Akron appears on the Motiontron afterwards and tells Titanfall that he's going to be the next step in Titanfall's championship reign. So we will more than likely, it's pretty much almost set in stone, that it will be Titanfall defending the title against Philip Akron at Final Chapter 2015. It's just a matter of seeing how they do it and how they pull it off. So I'm interested in that. Afterwards, there's an interview with Alex who talks about how he wants to defeat James and make sure that James does not get too inside his own head, so that way he doesn't expect to come out victorious in the night, because he doesn't want him to be let down by his own mistakes. Which plays a part in the match afterwards that comes up next, which was the third match. It was Alex defeating James, so he did defeat James, and afterwards James told Alex that he did not want to be thought of as a loser, so he was going to take him out later in the night. Either that, later in the night, or at Intensity, my bad. But he was going to be out to get him. So what Alex said about James was he didn't want James to get inside his own head and kind of jump to conclusions and take it too far if he were to beat him. And Alex beat him, and then James took it too far and threatened Alex, and now pretty much puts Alex at a spot where he has to keep constantly looking behind his back and making sure that no one's going to be jump attacking him, which is a great way to kind of continue this feud. And I would have expected this feud to continue, and I do expect this feud to continue. This is a great feud going on right now. It's one of the best mid-card feuds right now, and I feel like it's very underrated, but I think that, it will get the notice it deserves over time, and if it doesn't, oh well, it's still an interesting pay-per-view. I mean, pay-per-view, it's still an interesting match and feud, but if it doesn't get the notice that it wants, or that it should get, then I have a feeling USW will cancel that later on, or cancel that soon, and go to other routes with these other performers, so that way, they are more interested in that feud, because interest sells everything with fans in wrestling. Fourth match on the card was for the Blue Belt Championship. Simon Saint defended the title against Anarchy and Lane. Simon Saint ended up defeating Anarchy. He ended up pinning Lane, while Anarchy was on the outside. So that just sets up the Simon Saint and Lane feud. I'm expecting that we'll be going into Final Chapter 2015, and Anarchy is more than likely going to be distancing himself away from the Blue Belt Championship picture, so I'm expecting this feud, between Simon Saint and Lane to go onto Call of Greatness 10, and Anarchy do something else, pretty much. So that's what I feel is the direction for these performers. It was a great match, or not great match, it was an okay match, and I forgot to rate the other matches before this, but it's alright. They pretty much were all 3 stars, and this one was probably a 3-star as well. It was, of course, it wasn't the best match on the card. It was probably the most exciting, but it was one of the few matches that really caught your eye for the entire pay-per-view. So there was that. Afterwards, Lane attacked Simon Saint, and Lane turned face during that. Simon Saint, I guess, tried to showboat over Anarchy, and that kind of just proves that while Anarchy was laying on the ground, he's just going to fade away from this feud. And then Lane attacked Simon Saint and turned face, considering Simon Saint as a heel technically balances out, whereas Lane would turn face. So that was their way of turning this feud into a heel versus face match. Fifth match on the card was for the International Championship. Gringo retained the championship, defeating Fernandez, and I don't know how to feel about this match. It was an alright match. It wasn't bad, but it was definitely a match that made me worry. And most wrestling fans and reviewers and critics and all of that shit. Most of the time, when they see a performer that they think deserves some spot or some time as I don't know how to explain it, but when they see a performer that deserves a spot as more notified or more noticed, when they see a performer that deserves a good spot on a good rivalry, they want that performer to have a direction. I don't see either of these performers having a direction. Gringo is the international champion, so he'll probably face off against some other challenger, which will probably be revealed on Intensity this upcoming Wednesday. But Fernandez, I don't think he's getting another international championship match, so I don't know what he's going to do. He's probably going to fade away for a while, unless USW already has something planned for him. In that case, that's great, but I don't know what to expect for Fernandez. The match was alright. It wasn't very good. It was probably a 2-star match. These performers the 2 performers who can have chemistry, at one point or in one match, and then the other match not have chemistry. And this was just one of the matches where it was, shut up! Man, oh man, oh man. Hey boy, jeez. Afterwards, Dwayne Porter is attacked by Dustin Raymond backstage and is carried to the trainer's room after getting a concussion. So Dwayne Porter gets attacked by Dustin Raymond. Raymond leaves him with a concussion, which just further advances the feud. And I don't know, I mean, I think it had something, well, I think the main event definitely signified something, but I'll get into that later. Anyway, that was an interesting promo. Sixth match was reigning standard, DHIG and Reign defeating Case, the team of Hanasley and Amor. It was an okay match. I guess nothing really special about it. I would have expected more from these guys. I know they're new tag teams, and I know they're new partners, and they have to get used to the tag team spot and used to teaming with each other. But this was not the way to do it. Putting these new guys against each other, it just it was not very good. It was a 2-star match at the most. At the most and at the least, it was a 2-star match. And yeah, moving on. Well, afterwards, Reign Standard escaped the cage after Case tried to blindside them. DHIG climbed to the top of the cage and jumped onto both Hanasley and Amor. Reign then hit a senton bomb from the top of the cage and onto both members of Case. So Reign and DHIG did some high-flying maneuvers on Case from the top of the cage. I guess just because USW noticed that the match wasn't very good, so they had to kind of make up for it. This did not make up for it, but I guess it advances this kind of feud. And I hope this isn't a feud, because these two should not be fighting against each other, or these teams should not be fighting against each other yet. I think they still need to be carried by other tag teams and more advanced and skilled tag teams, just because they're not quite ready to face other newbies yet. So that's my thought on that. Seventh match was for the USW Tag Team Championships. This was probably the most anticipated match for me. The USW Tag Team Championships, Ezra and Kills and Benny Franklin defending against Chain Reaction and Indigo Reaction. This match was amazing. This match was probably the most well-done matches on the card. Probably the most well-done match the entire pay-per-view. I think Benny Franklin and Ezra and Kills are a great tag team. And I think Chain Reaction and Indigo Child are this great, the great kind of tag team that you would not think would be, tag team partners. Wouldn't think they had chemistry, but they showed that in the ring. They showed that they have chemistry in the ring, and they can perform well with Ezra and Kills and Benny Franklin. So if they're going to continue this feud, they need to have more interesting promos and segments between these two teams on Intensity and on pay-per-views and all that. And I hope this feud goes into Cult of Greatness 10, and I hope it stops at Cult of Greatness 10, because then it just kind of tests its length. And I think Cult of Greatness 10 would be a great place to end it and have them go in different directions. So this match was great. Ezra and Kills and Benny Franklin ended up winning and retaining the USW Tag Team Championships. So many great spots. I think Benny Franklin ended up hitting the power bomb on, I think, Chain Reaction, while Ezra and Kills did this senton bomb over the top rope and onto Indigo Child, knocking them into the side of the cage. And Franklin pinned Chain Reaction for the win. I'm pretty sure that's how it went. And that was it was a great match. 4 stars, no doubt about it. Probably the most well-done match of the entire card. I'm going to take back what I said about not being the best match, but I think it was the best match, and I think it was also the most anticipated match, which is probably why it was so good. The promos have been so great, and I'm liking what I'm seeing from these two teams. Afterwards, Capital thanked Yo-Yo Joe for the championship spot and welcomed him back to the good side, pretty much signifying, or pretty much breaking the fourth wall and saying, yeah, Yo-Yo Joe is a good guy again. Joe said thank you and told him not to disappoint him. So he put the pressure on Capital to win the match against Seth, and I feel like that kind of says something about Capital and Yo-Yo Joe, and about how they, since they are good friends, in real life, this kind of just shows that no matter where it is, Yo-Yo Joe and Capital can always get along. So that was a great promo for me, at least. Eighth match on the card was for the USW World Heavyweight Championship. It was Seth defending the championship against Capital. Capital defeated Seth for the championship and won the world title. He hit the Capital Punishment on Seth while he was on the cage wall, knocking Seth to the ground, and then went to pin Seth. So that's how he ended up winning. Afterwards, Yo-Yo Joe came out and helped Capital take on Seth, who tried to attack him again and get his championship back. Yo-Yo Joe and Capital ended up shaking hands before going their separate ways, so it's more than likely going to happen. So it's more than likely not going to happen being a Yo-Yo Joe and Capital match. It'll probably go on for Capital vs. Seth, and that's probably where that's going to take it. So, yeah, that's how I see it going, at least until Cold Greatness 10. Ninth match on the card was the main event. It was the Steel Pergatory match for the USW Championship. Zach Hardy defended the USW Championship against Marjigata, Cannon, Western Light, Morbid, and Dustin Raymond. The match was pretty good. It was a 3-star match, so it was a World Championship match. But this was a 3-star match. The entries were Zach Hardy and Dustin Raymond started, Western Light came in 3rd, Morbid came in 4th, Cannon came in 5th, and Marjigata came in 6th. They all went back and forth. I think it was Dustin Raymond who got to the top of the cage and got the championship belt before going down the cage. And I think it was to the point where he was in the middle cage and Dwayne Porter was cutting a hole in the cell portion, and then jumped in and attacked Dustin Raymond before he can get into the bottom cage. He attacked Dustin Raymond, threw him out of the middle cell. They brawled up to the ramp after going up the backside. Dustin Raymond dropped the championship belt into the bottom cage. I think it was Morbid who was walking, or who grabbed it and went to the cage, but Western Light was coming down from the middle cage. Morbid looked up and Western Light hit him with a crossbody, pretty much ending both of their match. Cannon got the championship belt and was going towards the door with it until Hardy hit a stomach pump on him. Hardy then grabbed the championship. It looked like he was about to escape the cage through the door, and immediately you see, cause the camera angle kind of made it a little difficult, especially with the Kevin Dunn shaky cam. That's pretty much signature in the WWE that was utilized there. But it was a close-up of Hardy, and then immediately you see the camera whip back as Marjigata hits him with the decapitator. And that ended up knocking Hardy down to the ground, and then Marjigata picked up the championship and walked out the door with it. So Marjigata defeated all 5 other performers and won the USW Championship, ending Zach Hardy's historical reign of 210 days as the USW Champion. So Marjigata defeated Zach Hardy. He then got up again, he picked up Zach Hardy, and then leaned him up against the cell and grabbed the chair that was used earlier on and hit a decapitator on Hardy on the chair, which is supposed to, but put Hardy out and let him take his break. So you're probably not going to see Zach Hardy for a while. And Marjigata wins the USW Championship, so you're more than likely going to see a Zach Hardy versus Marjigata feud probably after Cold Greatness 10, somewhere around after that. But for right now, we're going to find out what Marjigata has in store with the USW Championship. It was a 3-star match. It was interesting. Not the best match, but, it did well for what it was. Now, if you're going to ask me what I thought of the Steel Pergatory pay-per-view in general, I'm going to give it 3 stars. I think I gave it 2 stars last year. or I think I thought of it as 2 stars last year. This year, I'm giving it 3 stars. It would have been a 4-star pay-per-view had it not been for the Reigns Standard and Case match and the Gringo versus Fernandez match. But besides that, every other match was pretty much great. Well, not great, but it was good enough to go back and watch. And it's a pay-per-view that I think would have done better had it had more depth in its match card, more of a story behind it. But it was a great pay-per-view either way. Good enough to pass the average mark. So that was pretty much that. If you want to tell me what your thoughts on the pay-per-view was, leave a comment in the comment section below. I'm pretty sure Zach will get back to you on that, or I will get back to you on that, whichever one happens, or whichever goes first. But yeah, that was pretty much that. So thank you for watching. This was my review of USW Steel Pergatory 2015. Remember to like, favorite, and subscribe for more. I am Chase Clover, signing off. Oh, and before I sign off, just wanted to let you know that I will not be putting up an intensity review this week. I've done one for the past 3 weeks, and this week is my week off, so you're not going to get an intensity review this week, so there's that. So thank you for watching. Remember to like, favorite, and subscribe for more. I'm Chase Clover, signing off.